Hi, this is Jessica with cutesy-crafts.com. Today I'm going to teach you how to sew on a sewing machine. As a beginner, if you're not sure if you're going to really like sewing, I recommend just getting a cheaper sewing machine. They don't make this particular machine anymore, but I will leave a link to its equivalent in the description of the video. I'm going to focus most of my video using the Brothers sewing machine since I suspect that most of you will be beginners, but I'll show you how to thread this one as part of the video as well. Besides your sewing machine, there are a few other supplies that you're going to need to have. The first being some fabric. When you first start out sewing, you want to get a non-stretchy fabric. Your best bet is going to be 100% cotton, what people use for like quilting. You'll also need some fabric scissors. Any kind will do, and make sure that you never ever use them to cut paper or they will get dull. You'll want some all-purpose sewing thread. You'll need bobbins, and usually they will come with your machine, but if you don't have them, this is what they look like. Make sure that you get the kind that go with your particular model of sewing machine. You'll need some straight pins. These are the most common with the ball on top. I like these flat ones because they tend to get less in the way, and they're cute with a little bird on top. They have different designs that you can get. You'll also need a seam ripper for the mistakes that you will inevitably make. It's to rip out any stitching. Be careful, it's sharp. My machine came with one. And then other optional but highly recommended supplies, a flexible measuring tape like this, especially if you plan on doing any kind of apparel sewing. A big clear ruler like this is really nice to have, and it's a must-have. If you want to use a rotary cutter like this here, looks like a pizza cutter, also very sharp, so be very careful when using this. You'll need to have an iron and an ironing board or ironing mat. Also optional is some kind of chalk marking device. You can just get, they have pencils you can use, dressmaker's chalk, and then also some kind of pin cushion is nice to have to store your pins. Or I also have this magnetic bowl that has a bunch of random stuff in it. It's kind of nice because you can just throw the pins and they'll stick in there. Okay, first things first, we are going to set up our sewing machine to get ready to start sewing. It should have come with a power cord and a pedal. Take the cord, and there should be a round hole somewhere to plug that in. Take your pedal, put it on the floor. The other cord has a plug like this. Look for a spot to plug that in on the side or on the back. This one's on the side. And then we'll plug it in so we can get some power. Once you're plugged in, look around for the power button right there. Turn it on. Your machine will hopefully come with a needle. These are different than what you would use for like hand sewing. And then to take the needle out, you would just use a screwdriver here, hold the needle with your other hand, and turn it left to loosen, and the needle will come out. And then to replace the needle, there's a flat side and a curved side. You want the flat side facing the back. Use your fingers to push the needle up in here while that's loosened. And then you can use the screwdriver to tighten that in. This little thing here is called the presser foot. There are different presser foot attachments for different functions. You can see they all kind of have a little bit of a different shape, and they should be marked with letters. So this one is letter C. This one has in the middle a letter R. And the one I'm using here is the all-purpose sewing presser foot, and it's letter J. So you may be asking, like, how do I know which presser foot I'm supposed to be using? Make sure that you keep your manual. If not, you can certainly try to look it up online. But inside the manual, there should be these graphs that show you each of the stitches. And right here, it says presser foot, and it says J for all of these basic stitches. All right, now I've got the machine turned to the side so you can see how to change out the presser foot. Right here on the back, you'll see this black little button. You'll press up on that, and the presser foot will drop just like that. And you can see right here, this is what is holding the presser foot on, is this little metal bar right there in the middle. So say I want to change it out for this presser foot R. In order to do that, I would line up this little metal bar with this little hook thing right here, and I'm going to push that up into place, and then we're good to go. And then something that you'll be needing to do quite frequently when you sew is raising the presser foot up and down. The presser foot lever should be around here. This is the neck of my machine, and you can see this little lever, it's toward the back, and we're gonna go push it down to make the foot go down, and then raise it back up to make the foot go up. So your machine is going to have a top thread, which is going to be your main spool of thread here, and then a bottom thread or bobbin thread that's going to be fed in from the bottom of the machine. And you want your top thread and your bobbin thread to be matching. So I'm going to show you how to get the thread from here, from your spool, to here. If you're unable to locate the bobbin that came with your machine, it might be already installed in the machine. In this one, to get it to it, I just pull on this little button here. There's an arrow to show you. Gonna lift up this plastic shield, and then there's the bobbin tucked away inside. Threading the bobbin and threading your machine is going to be a little bit different on every machine, but I'll show you how to do it on this one. This one has a little pin that comes up and down over here. We want that up. So unwind some of the thread, and then you are going to put this on here with the thread coming off of the top and going that way. And there should be a hole in the bottom to put that on. If there isn't and there's paper covering, just poke through the paper. Next, I'm going to take my bobbin and put it on this little guy over here, push it down, and then I'm going to give it a little turn until it clicks to the right. Next, I'm going to move this bobbin over to the right like that, and that tells my machine that we are going into bobbin threading mode so that it doesn't try to sew, it'll thread the bobbin instead. Now hopefully your machine is nice like mine and has little numbered diagram with arrows on it. If not, make sure to check your manual, but this is how we are going to thread this machine. So you'll see here that there are two number ones. The ones with the dark circle around them are for threading your bobbin, and the ones that don't have the dark circle are for threading the machine later. So we're going to follow the ones with the circle. So you see on the diagram it says that we're going to go around this metal pin right here. We're going to take it, go around the bottom and go around the pin, and we actually want to take both hands and kind of pull on that to slide it underneath that pin. And then the diagram shows that we're going to cross back over the top of this thread with this thread, so it's making an X, and then bring it back over to the right. And then we're coming over here to the bobbin, and then number 2 says we're going to wrap it from the top and around. So wrap it, and I like to wrap it like 2 or 3 times around the bobbin. Make sure you're not wrapping around the top there. My bobbin threader has a little slit. I'm going to slide it through there. And then it has this little blade in there that cuts it. So that's why my thread cuts. So I just pulled it off to the side. And then my pedal that's on the floor works just like if you were driving a car. The further down you press it, the faster it goes. I'm gonna press this on the floor with my foot. So you wanna have smooth, consistent pressure. And I'm just gonna press all the way down on the foot pedal to thread this. So you can see the thread goes up and down to make it nice and even. And then once you've gotten it pretty full, you're gonna slide the bobbin threader back over, because that tells my machine we are ready to sew and we're not doing this bobbin stuff anymore. Take that off, and then you can trim that with scissors, or on the side of my machine, there's a little hidden blade inside this little thing right here. This is the front of my machine. Here's the little blade, and we're just gonna slide that through. And then it cuts that for us, and my bobbin is threaded. So again, I've got a little diagram here that shows me which way my bobbin's supposed to be facing. Different machines are going to have a different setup for their bobbin, but for this one, it says that my thread should be coming up off the top this way, and I just pop it down in there. There's an arrow right here and a little plastic bit right there. So I'm going to take the thread, slide it under that plastic thing there along the arrow, and then there is a slit in the plastic all the way around here. I'm going to lay the thread in there, carry it around, and then there's a little blade in there that's going to cut it for me. So I just do that, cuts it, and then I put the cover back on. Okay, now we're gonna wanna thread the top thread of our machine, and then we'll bring that down to the needle. But before we do that, I wanna show you how to raise and lower the needle. My machine has a button that I can press that makes the needle go down and then makes the needle go back up. If you don't have that, you can also do it by turning this wheel. So if I turn it, that's gonna go down and then back up. And I can tell on my machine that the needle is up by having this line at the topmost part. So before you thread your machine, you want to make sure that your needle is in the top position. So just like when we threaded our bobbin, we're gonna make sure that this is on here good and the thread is coming up off the top. And now we're gonna be following the numbers that don't have the black circle around them. I'm taking my thread and putting it through that groove on this little silver thing here. It's just going under this part and through there. Next, I have a number 2 with an arrow right here. So we're gonna go down this slit on the right side here. At the bottom, I've got a number 3 with a U-turn arrow. So we're gonna go around that part of the machine and back up through this slit here. Now, here is why you wanna make sure our needle is up, because this little silver thing will not be in the right position. Can you kind of see that in there? Take the thread and we're taking it to the right side of that silver thing and around the back of it, and then it should get caught on it, and then we'll pull the thread down. So I've got my hand down here now pulling the thread. And you see this little guy right here under this is where the pin that we loosened to change our needle. So this is right above the needle. I'm going to take this again, like we're flossing, I've got it in 2 fingers, and I'm going to slide it in the little crack between this little metal piece here and the metal piece holding my needle in. Next, you will need to thread this needle through the front to the back, and mine has a needle threader built into it, and if yours doesn't, you can just take the thread. You might need to moisten it a little bit, make sure there's a clean cut on the end, and you stick it through the eye of that needle coming from the front to the back. Now, if you happen to have some kind of needle threader, this one is a little bit tricky to use. There's this little lever here on the left, and I'm going to take my right hand, and you can see I'm kind of hooking it under and to the right to get it to hook onto that hook right there. And then I'm going to pull this down, not all the way yet, and then I'm stretching the thread across the eye of the needle, and then I press down all the way with my left, and then I'm going to, at the same time, let go of this thread slightly with my right hand as I'm releasing the button on my left. And then, with any luck, we have a loop of thread that came through the back, and then I can just pull on that loop, and then my needle is threaded. Once your needle is threaded, take the thread, pull out some of the length of it, and we're gonna take it, and there's a little slit in the front of my presser foot here, and I'm going to slide that through. If yours doesn't have a slit and it just has a hole, you want to thread that thread through the hole, and then we'll take the thread here and just kind of drape it off to the back of the machine. My Babylock machine is a little bit different. It's got this cover on top that you open up. There's a picture right here that shows me my spool of thread should have the thread coming up off the bottom right there. So I'll slide that on there, and then it comes with these different size caps. You want it to be the same size or bigger than the head of this thread here. Otherwise the thread's gonna get caught on the head of this. So I'm gonna take my thread, number 1 here, we're gonna go around that down around the bottom of that metal thing, and then for threading our bobbin, we're gonna go off to the right over here. We got that little pin. We're gonna slide it under there, just like the diagram shows, and then we would wind it over here around the bobbin. To thread the top, we're gonna follow the knot circle covered numbers. We're gonna go down number 1, around this metal thing up. Then number 2, we're gonna follow over here to the left through that slit. We're gonna go down just like on the other machine. Inside of the top, you can see the little metal thing down in there. We're gonna go to the right of it, up and around, and then down to the left. We're gonna take our thread and put it in that spot between that little metal thing. Mine has a number 6 on it in that spot. And then the needle threader on this one is really, really cool. So you can see over here, I've got a number 7. So there's this little metal part here. We wanna kind of have it go up in the little groove in there. You can see the diagram here up through this part on the number 7. And then back around the side, there's my little blade, and I'm going to cut that off, and it should stay in place right there. And then all I have to do is up here on the left, there's a button, and I'm just gonna press it down and release and watch what it does. It just automatically threads that needle for me perfectly. And then this is actually a quilting presser foot that I have on here that also has a slit on it. I'm gonna pull that thread through the slit and drop it in the back. This little wheel here is your sewing machine tension. The default I think is 4. Mine's on a 3. So if your stitches come out kind of weird, then you can play around with the tension and find a video for how to adjust that. My machine here, because it's computerized, has all of these stitches over here numbered, and they're also in the manual. So say I wanted to do stitch number 4, which is a zigzag, I would use this button here to change that number to 04. And so you can see on my diagram, the zigzag is 04 there. And then it tells me right here, I'm using presser foot J, which is what we already have installed. To change the length of your stitch, that is this button here. So I can go up or down to change the length, and then to change the width, which would change like how far my zigzag is going over, I would push this button here. Let's go back, and we're just gonna start with a straight stitch, which is what my machine defaults to. We've got presser foot J. I'm just going to use the default, which is 2.5 length. If you increased it to the highest, if you ever see something that says that you need to do a basting stitch, what it does is makes longer stitches for you so that they're easier to take out, because a basting stitch is just temporary. But let's take that back down to the default, and we can start stitching. These little pronged things here are called the feed dogs, and that is what takes your fabric and feeds it through the machine. On the back of this machine is a lever or a switch that switches the feed dogs down and up. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little triangle with lines going through it. That means your feed dogs are up. For a normal stitching operation, you want the feed dogs up. On the front of my machine, I can control how slow or how fast the stitches go. To the left is going to be slower. I suggest you start there if you're a beginner. Grab your scrap piece of fabric. If you don't have some random fabric sitting around, you can also use a piece of paper. I learned how to sew on my mom's sewing machine with paper. So you'll see on the machine, there is a grid here with numbers, and that helps us line up how far over we want our stitching to be. Down here, you can see 1/4, that's 1/4 of an inch. And that measurement is called your seam. So if you see something that says there's a 1/4 inch seam allowance, you would line the fabric up with that line right there. And then also on my presser foot, it shows where 1/4 inch is. There's 2 little lines on the clear plastic, and I can use that to also help me line up my stitches. If you line up the fabric with the side of your presser foot, that's generally a 1/2 inch. The side of this grid right here is 5/8 of an inch. And then it goes over. Up here it says 1 inch. So if I lined it up there as I was sewing, that would be 1 inch away. For the purposes of this video, I'm gonna use our 5/8 inch seam allowance. So my needle's up, my presser foot's up. I'm gonna take my fabric, line it up with that 5/8 inch line right there. And how far back it is depends on where you wanna start stitching. So the needle's gonna go straight down. So make sure you don't put it way far in or it's gonna start stitching really far into your fabric. Make sure this thread, by the way, is going back that way. We're gonna line it up with the line and bring our presser foot down. Next, I'm gonna push very lightly on my foot pedal and do a couple stitches forward. I want 2 or 3 stitches forward. My machine, both of them that I have, my brother and my Babylock, don't do this, but frequently on a machine, when you first start sewing, put the presser foot down and you have to hold this top thread so it doesn't get lost. But if you are finding that your needle keeps coming unthreaded when you're sewing, when you first start, that is the problem. You need to hold this thread while you start sewing, then you can let go of it. And then in order to lock that stitch in place so that it doesn't come undone, we need to do some back stitches, some backward stitches. So this reverse button here is how I would do that on this machine. On other machines, on the wheel over here that I showed you earlier, sometimes there's a button that you'll press in and that will get your machine to stitch backwards. But for my machine, I can either push this once, twice, or 3 times, or I can hold it down. And what that does is it locks the thread and my stitches in place so that they don't come undone. But you want to do that forward 2 or 3 stitches and backward 2 or 3 stitches every time you start and stop stitching. So now what I'm going to do is start stitching forward. It's gonna pull my fabric through. You don't wanna push the fabric. It'll do the job. The feed dogs will do that job for you. You just kinda wanna keep it in line and make sure that it's going along that 5/8 inch line that I said I wanted to do. So I'm going to press down on my foot pedal and we're gonna start stitching forward. Usually I'll have one hand on the left and one hand on the right, just kind of guiding that through. And the harder you press on the pedal, generally the faster it will go. Make sure also that you keep your fingers away from this area. There is a chance that the needle could go through your finger, which we absolutely do not want. So stitch along there, guiding it as it goes. If it goes off track like that, just kind of guide it back to where it was. We're just practicing here. All right, I've gotten almost to the edge of my fabric here, and say I want to turn the corner and start stitching that way. How we would do that is we want to make sure our needle is down and we're going to lift the presser foot up. We'll turn the fabric. You can see our nice stitches over there. Turning our fabric, bringing our presser foot back down, and then we would keep this lined up. And my fabric is pretty frayed here. We're dealing with scrap fabric here, but you get the general idea. So we would go along and then say I want to be done stitching right there. So what I would need to do is do some backwards stitches. So I'm holding that backwards button. I'm going to do 2 or 3 backward, 2 or 3 forward, and then what we'll do is lift our presser foot, push the button to raise the needle, and then all you do is slide the fabric out like so. We'll have string attached here. You can cut it with scissors, or remember we have this hidden little blade off here to the side. We'll cut it and then we are good to go. Those stitches will stay in just like that. Now let's say that you are sewing and you come to a curve and you want to sew a curve. What you would do for that is just keep sewing, and then you would just ever so slightly turn the fabric in the direction you want it to go around that curve. And remember, we're not pushing it, I'm just turning it. If the curve is really tight, you can also pick up the presser foot, turn it just a little, stitch, pick it up, turn it a little, stitch, and continue to do that to make a tighter turn. When sewing on 2 pieces of fabric with a print on one side and nothing on the back, patterns will use the term right sides together or wrong sides together. The right side is the side that has the cute print on it, and the wrong side is the one that does not. So if your pattern says right sides together, that means you're going to be putting the pattern side touching the pattern side together like so. And then to sew a seam, you would put the two straight edges together like that. Take some pins and you're gonna put them down the seam to keep it in place. So you will poke the needle through on the right side going toward the left, and then poke it back out like so. And then continue that every couple of inches or so down the side of your fabric. And then I would take my fabric over to my machine with the pin heads coming out that way, and this is the seam that we want to sew. And I would line up my seam with whatever seam allowance we're given. So say we're doing 5/8, I would line that up there, bring my presser foot down. We'll go forward a couple stitches, backward a couple stitches, and then follow that line. And right before your pin's about to go under the needle, you're gonna slide that out to the right. Keep sewing along. Pull out the next needle. And then continue that all the way down the line. Right before you get to the end, do a couple back stitches and then forward stitch just off the edge. Now I've got my nice straight seam along here, and our two fabrics are together with the pretty side on the outside and all of this ugliness on the inside. A lot of times you'll iron the seam open like so, or frequently on quilting patterns you'll iron it one way or the other. And usually you would want to use thread that matches your fabric, so that way it doesn't show at all in the front. Another thing that you'll commonly want to be doing in sewing is called a hem. And so what a hem is, we need to hide this raw edge of our fabric. A hem is seen at the bottom of dresses or pants or curtains frequently. So what you would do for that, you would fold up the raw edge. I'm folding that about 1/2 or 1/4 of an inch. And then you can fold it up again way up here if you want a really large hem. Or if you want a small hem, you could just do a little rolled hem, which is just folding it up again. So I folded it up my 1/2 to 1/4 inch and then just fold it up again. And normally you would iron this to keep it nice and flat. And then after you've ironed, you can pin this in place. Take this, and we want the needle, where the needle's going down, to be as close to this fold here as possible. Lower my presser foot around where I think that is gonna be. So again, like before, we're gonna go forward a couple stitches, backward a couple stitches. I'm gonna take this needle out because it's in my way, the pin, and go ahead and stitch along. And then again, like before, right before we get to the end, we're going to take it backward a couple stitches and then forward off the edge. And then again, we would be using a thread that matches the color of our fabric better, but you can see our raw edge is now encased in the hem here. That is it for this video. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit more confident using your sewing machine. I'll be making videos in the future that show how to do more advanced features. Head over to my blog, cutesycrafts.com, for more fun craft ideas, and make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a video.